Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Trail Talk Highpointing podcast. As many listeners know, I took a 2-month break from podcasting for the birth of our daughter, Rory. She was born on October 7th and is a happy and healthy addition to our family. We couldn't be happier, and I'm really looking forward to taking her up on some high points soon. I'm equally happy to get back to podcasting and to talking to high pointers, so thank you for tuning into the show after my time off. For this week's episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Dushku, who also goes by the Lord of Maps. Many of you in the highpointing community know his work and have seen it, particularly the State Highpoint drawing and his new State Highpoint book. I reached out to Isaac a few months ago and asked if he'd like to speak with me about what inspired him to start drawing maps, and particularly the State Highpoints. And I found through my chat with Isaac that he's a lot like most of us in that he loves to look at maps and lists, and he knows that they're great for planning adventure. And if you're not familiar with his work, I encourage you to check out his website, lordofmaps.com, to see the illustrations mentioned throughout this episode. So before we get into the episode, I want to thank everyone again for listening, and I would not be an annoying podcaster and YouTuber if I didn't ask you to subscribe to my show and spread the word. Also, if you'd like to be on the show, send me an email using the link in the show notes. Here's my interview with Dushku, the Lord of Maps. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Trail Talk Highpointing podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, and my guest today is Dushku, also known as Lord of Maps to many listeners. Isaac, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So a lot of my listeners know about your Highpoint map. If you're viewing this on YouTube, you can see that behind me. And if you're listening, go ahead and check out lordofmaps.com, where you can see all of Isaac's work. So he draws each state high point to pretty good detail and from lowest to highest, and he puts them in these beautiful formats. And his latest format is the book. And it is called The Highpoints, the Tallest Point in Each State by the Dushku brothers. And it is so cool because it has these like 3D features, and there's a little story that you can follow along. And it kind of brings out the inner child in all of us as you look through these, and you just want to stand on all these as you read through them. So again, Isaac, thanks for being here. And we'd like to know a little bit about your background in map making and why high points.
All right, so I'm 25 years old, and so I don't have like a super long history of making maps, and really it all began with the pandemic. So I have been like decently good at drawing, but mostly I've been like just drawing a bunch of stuff like mentally and not acting on it at all. And so I had this idea. I'm like, man, what if because I'm from Utah, I'm like, what if I did a map of Utah in like a fantasy style? And I just sat on that idea for years. And it's not like the most original idea. Like there's definitely people out there that have done it before. And I'm like, man, I think I could do it. And I think I could do it better. And so I drew a map in basically, I think, February 2020, right as like kind of whispers of the pandemic were coming out. And by March, I'd sold my first map. And then by like 2 months later, I had like 10 more maps. And it was now my like full-time thing.
Wow.
And that's back in 2020. And now it's, 2023, and I've got like over 75 maps, and it's the thing I do every single day. Like I had to drop out of school and stuff. Like it is like my full-time gig now. I went from being a casual, like, oh, this is a fun idea, to like, oh wow, like this is who I am now. This is what I do.
So why high points?
Yeah, so I mean, probably a lot of your listeners don't even know about my my other maps, but like I mostly did state maps. Utah, and beginning with Utah and finishing with like North Dakota or something. And that was kind of what I was like known for, to the point where I was like, man, am I just like a one-trick pony? And like, is there something I can do to like branch out from these fantasy style maps and do something pretty different, but also have like an overlap in the people that are interested in that? And there's some European dude back in the 1830s that would draw out individual mountains and stuff of Asia and Europe and stuff, so that you could see the tallest all the way down to the smallest on the same piece of paper. So I'm like, oh, that's obviously super awesome to look at. And so I looked it up. Like he created it before the U.S. had even been fully formed, and I was like, has anyone done that for the U.S.? Because like there's tons of people that love high pointing. Like I'd heard about that even before I did research, and looked online, and there wasn't anything. There was nobody that had like ever drawn Denali to Britton Hill, and
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, hey, I'm doing it. Totally out of my comfort zone. I'm actually not that like skilled of an artist. I've got like a pretty narrow set of skills,
I
and
would not have
so
guessed.
well, I guess I can draw mountains, I suppose, but
Hmm.
can't draw a face at all. But so I labored on it. I totally kept it a secret. Like didn't tell anyone, didn't tell my followers or anything. And I was like, who knows, right? Like it's just something that I think is cool. It's something that should exist, and I'm just gonna put it out there. And when I did, it was like, oh, this is the most popular thing I've ever done in my entire life. It was
Yes.
like
Yes.
like overnight, I was like, oh, okay, wow. Like I'm not the map dude anymore.
Hmm.
I'm like the high points dude. And I sell my maps and stuff, and this thing has sold more than almost all of my maps put together. So I
Wow.
was like, oh, wow, people love mountains, and they love lists, and they love
Yep.
the visual of it.
And then I think you hit all the things that I find are common among listeners when I ask, how did you get into it? Some of them say, I'm sorry, not my listeners, my guests. Some of them will say, well, I love maps and I love lists. And
Yeah,
and this is just a way of combining those two. And so not only is it such a concise way to just put what you love onto your wall or on your bookshelf or something like that, but your work is also very accurate. And I think that when a lot of us Google, high points, lowest to tallest, or seven summits, lowest to tallest, we can find illustrations, but it's literally a triangle.
yeah,
And it's like you look at it and you go, no, Britton Hill's not a triangle. And it'll just have small triangles to large triangles, and it'll say the mountain and the height in feet. But yours
yeah.
is, like I said, it's very accurate and it's such a good visual. And I think when people look at it, I'm only speaking for myself, but we kind of do this checklist in our mind like, okay, this one's next. I did this one. And then after I did this one, I can probably do this one. And so it helps us just kind of look at it and think about what we've done and what we could do and what's next. And it's so fun. I think just having it on your wall is a really good conversation piece. And then having this book on your coffee table or on your bookshelf, it's so fun because it literally pops out or pops up at you. And so you did the illustrations of the mountains, but then you also tell a little story in the book too. And those are some really good illustrations as well. So I'm surprised to hear you say, I'm not much of an artist. Like, I think you're humble bragging, to be honest.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's all been in a vacuum. I haven't
Hmm.
actually had a ton of feedback, so it's like, oh, I don't know. To me, it's like, I mean, there's Michelangelos out there on Instagram,
Yeah,
and
sure.
I'm not part of that group yet.
Well, the feedback could be in the amount of people who buy your work and who support what you do.
That's a good point. That's a good
Yeah.
point.
So do you have a geography background?
So I love geography. Like I was always like everybody that's listening to this, always into maps and stuff. And I was in the business school at college, and then I was like, man, what am I doing? I'm gonna switch to the geography department. And so I switched to geography, took like two classes, and then I was like, I gotta focus on the business. And so,
Yeah.
but I loved it. I totally, I wasn't like a perfect match for the geography department because people like love maps that are extremely accurate and using like all sorts of technical tools to create beautiful maps, and I 100% respect that.
Hmm.
But my maps are more art. It's not as accurate. It's not as tech. It's certainly not as technical as Google Maps or something like that. And so
Right.
I really really enjoyed it though.
Yeah. And I think that when we look at your maps, we're not, you know, we don't have your map in one hand and our other hand is on the steering wheel saying, "Oh, where do I turn?"
Yeah, don't navigate with it. You'll get
Um,
lost for sure.
but you mentioned in your website that it's your goal for someone to look at your maps and kind of be taken somewhere else in their imagination. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so like I guess my philosophy is like when you look at a map, you either want to feel like, man, that is home,
Hmm.
or that is adventure. And so, people will either put a map of the place that they have lived or the place they've always wanted to live. And
Well,
you'll never
I
see
never
someone with
realized
just
that.
some random map of Iowa. No offense to Iowa, but like you're not going to see that. And so,
Hmm.
there's probably no stronger piece of art. I mean, I'm just going to call maps art.
Hmm.
There's probably none that strikes such like an emotion like a map does. Like there's wars that are fought over maps. There's wars that are settled over maps, and maps. Dudes, women looking at maps will get this like feeling in their heart sometimes, and straight up risk their lives to go and explore and go on adventures. So
Hmm.
I'm not advocating for that, but I do hope that when people look at my stuff, either it's like, man, that is my home, or like, man, that is adventure, and they just feel this kind of like burning in their heart. Like, man, I got to get out there and climb some rocks.
That is such a good way to put it. And you described the exact way that I look at maps without me even realizing that's the way I do it.
Cool.
I will like zoom in on a certain region of the country, knowing that like I want to go there, I want to do something there, but I don't think about what you just said. This is my adventure portion of looking at maps, and then this is where I've lived because I do that too. And I try to see the distance and like what could I do while I'm there? I noticed you're wearing a Lord of the Maps sweater.
Yeah.
Lord of Maps. Lord
Lord
of
of
Maps.
Maps.
Okay, now the turtle. Where did the turtle come from? Because I see that in your book as well.
Yeah, so I just drew this little guy.
Hmm.
Like the original was like this big, like very small,
Okay.
and posted it on Instagram, which that's like that's my platform.
Hmm.
And people were like, "Man, this is cool." And so I made like a hiking tortoise, and people were like, "Man, this is sweet." And they just I don't know, they just enjoy it. And I'm like, "Man, this could be like a cool little mascot." And
Yeah,
so
that's
for the
perfect.
high points book, I'm like, I could just talk about the I could talk about the high points, or I could have the little tortoise with mountains on his back, have him talk about it. So I don't know if it's me or the tortoise. We're picking the tortoise.
Yeah, I love the tortoise in the book. It makes it very whimsical. And also, I think the tortoise is a good metaphor for climbing mountains because while there are people who, attempt a fastest known time or some kind of record, it's generally advised that you go slow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's a slow and steady wins the race kind of thing.
that's right. Now, have you done any high points yourself?
I have done one high point. So I I
You're a high
climbed
that
King.
makes you a high pointer, just so we're clear.
I'm a, yeah, so one of 50.
Mm-hmm.
So I did King's Peak, which was that's no gentle high point. That's a real
Mm-hmm.
one.
Mm-hmm.
And it took several days, and we were in the news, our scout troop, because we lost two of our scouts while we were hiking, and they had to be found by search and rescue. They're fine now; they're
Okay.
still alive.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a memorable experience. And so
Jeez.
yeah, so I did Kings Peak. We lost a couple guys on
They
Kings
were found
Peak, and
though. When you
we were
say we
found.
lost, I mean people
That's
are
not
thinking the
far ahead,
worst.
you know.
Yeah.
So, and then I had the opportunity to climb Mauna Kea. Oh, actually, just to drive up to Mauna Kea, and I opted out for some stupid reason. So I'm a one-time high pointer with a really, really, really good excuse to do a second one, and just said no for some reason. So,
Well, it's not going anywhere, I've heard. So,
yeah, that's true. Well, it's
yeah,
probably growing actually.
that's right.
So,
Yeah, you're right. Do you have any high points on the horizon?
so um, when you look at the West, all of them are roughly, I mean, maybe this is controversial, all of them are roughly about the same height as Kings Peak.
Hmm.
And so I would love to just see what's on the East.
Yeah.
Like I live in the West, and I actually have never seen mountains in the East. And it's something about it that like sparks my curiosity. Because right now I'm at 4,000 like 200 feet or something where I
Hmm.
am sitting. And I always hear about Mount Washington, which is like 6,000 feet, and people are dying on it and stuff. And I'm just like thinking about that. I'm like, man, that's 2,000 feet above where I'm at. What does that
Hmm.
look like? I just want to. I want to be there. I've seen pictures, of course, but like I want to be in the East and look at a mountain. And I want to come to North Carolina and see, see the the Smokies. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so I have beautiful, beautiful mountains in the West, and I'm not knocking it at all, but I have a ton of curiosity to go and see the ones in the East, and
Well,
maybe
it's
climb them or drive up to them.
right. Yeah, you can do that on a lot of them. But it's really fascinating to see the elements at play. While these mountains are less rugged than the West, the weather plays a huge role in your
Hmm.
success of the summit, particularly in Mount Washington in New Hampshire. You mentioned you love lists, and I was scrolling through your website earlier, and I found a map of the tallest buildings in the
Hmm.
US from smallest to largest. What made you want to do that?
Yeah, so I did the high points and the highest buildings in like rapid succession. So
Okay.
I probably did both of them in a single month, um, just in my parents' basement, like drawing like crazy.
Wow.
And the reason why I thought that would be a cool idea is that the disparity between the tallest and the shortest is huge.
Okay.
And so, like with the high points, Denali to Florida is just like absolutely massive.
Hmm.
You have the World Trade Center, the new World Trade Center in New York City, and then you have like this absolutely tiny apartment building in Wyoming. And so I was like, oh, that'd actually be kind of a striking visual.
That's
And
cool.
I like it. I think it looks pretty cool.
Right. And I also saw a lakes and rivers map, and you also have country maps as well.
And I've got the seven summits.
You
So
do? Okay. Okay, perfect. I'll have to get that one.
yeah. So put that on the bucket list, right? Go
That's
climb
right.
all those
That's right.
once, all 50.
So, if listeners and viewers want to know more about your maps, how to get them, where to get them, how can they do that? And on what platforms can they follow you?
Yeah. So I have a website and I ship all across the US, and that's lordofmaps.com. If you can't remember that, um, then you probably won't remember my Instagram, but my Instagram is Lord of Maps, and
Yeah.
that's where I'm most active. And
Okay.
I'm also on Facebook. I'm on that newfangled TikTok website, and on all my social media accounts, I have a link, and so I'll be like, "Here's a map." You can click on it
Hmm.
and purchase it. And so, yeah,
That's
you
perfect.
can Google me.
Well, I feel like you're this mystery among high pointers because we all know your work, we all have your work, but we're like, who is he? And so I just, took a shot in the dark and I clicked the contact button on your website and I said, we'll just see if this happens. And so it was really nice to meet you. And I think I'm speaking for the whole high pointing community when I say we really appreciate your work and just want to display his newest work, the High Points book. There we go. And let me just show, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the different features of it because it's kind of like, what do you call it? It's not 3D, it's not pop up. What is it?
Like it's like a cutout or like a window. So
Okay,
basically,
window. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good.
it's got a window so you can see. the first page, and you can see the very last page in the entire book in one glance.
Yeah.
So actually, if you display it like open, it's pretty cool. Like
Oh,
on
that's a
on
good
a
idea.
table, like
That's a good
and out.
idea. Yeah, I should do that. Wow. Well, again, Isaac, thank you for being here, and thank you for what you do, because as high pointers, we can talk about it, we can write about it, but you put it on paper and you illustrate it, and you have such a gift, and we're very thankful for your work. And I'm thankful for your time on my podcast, and hope to hear more from you soon. And for all the listeners and viewers who want more information, follow Isaac on Instagram and all the platforms he mentioned. I know I do, and it's so cool to see you holding your work up and telling people what inspired you to do it. So thanks for everything.
Well, thank you guys, especially your listeners. Like you guys are putting food on my table, so I appreciate it. Thank you.